Hi, I'm Kylea Taylor, and I am going to interview today a very good friend of mine who has been my healer for 25 years, as well as my friend and a member of my women's group. And she is going to talk about what she's doing today and how she got there, which is a very interesting story. So welcome, Linda.
Thank you so much. It's been a
Yeah,
beautiful 25 years of knowing you.
it has. So I think we could start by, where are you now? What are you doing now? And how did you get there? Because I know there's a lot of threads that go back to a lot of different systems and a lot of different um, trainings that you've had. So just tell us what you're doing now, because it's unusual and it's very interesting.
Thank you. At this time, I am doing remote healing. I've spent the past well over 30 years doing hands-on healing. And at some point, I started having the capacity to work on people remotely come through. And that has developed into a beautiful way of engaging with people and helping them move through what they're experiencing on many different levels. And it's grown from the roots of my in-person practice into something that incorporates sound, the sound that comes through my voice, sometimes an instrument, but primarily my voice, and the energy that comes through my hands, because I found that there's no time and space when it comes to healing.
That's really true. From being on your table for many years, I know that you're really a master and you bring many things into that healing process. So tell us, what's a session like now when you're doing it remotely? What happens? What happens with you? What happens with the client? Give us a sense of that.
Hmm. When I'm working remotely, I set up my altar in a special way for that, um, that has things on it that I work with that inform me. And I take time at the beginning of each session to really listen, to really allow a person to express what's happening that with them, to ask them questions, to dig deeper, to really get into the feeling. And all of that time, I'm really listening. I'm really listening in on a lot of different levels, not to just what's being said, but to what's coming through in the spaces. I'm listening to what the threads are that dive deep into their past, even into their lineage. And I get flashes. It's always, my healing has always been like I'm watching a movie, and then I do what I see in the movie that comes to me. And so it's the same with the remote healing. I'm just following the prompts that spirit gives me. And that can evolve into shamanic journey work. It can evolve into um, song or frequency coming through. It can move back and forth between these spaces and more dialogue. And one of the things, the feedback that I've gotten about using the sound of my voice, is that it opens not my voice can open non-ordinary states for people and allow them to access what might not otherwise come through. And the other feedback is that it travels through the body, it travels through the lineages, and really allows access to very deep healing.
Yes, it sounds beautiful. You said something about sound, and is there like a resonance or something that you feel somehow? I know it's so hard
It's
to
part
talk
of the
about
movie.
these things. It's part of the movie. Okay.
It's a part of the movie. So as someone's speaking, sometimes a song comes forward as if it's tapping me.
Mhm.
And it may be a song that's unique to that person. It could just be a frequency. It may be a song that I know from medicine work or from some other avenue. And it may sit with me for a while before the moment arises for it to actually come through. And it may even change over time, or there may be more than one. But it's really about listening. And for me, the sound that comes through, it's not just about the sound, it's the light that it carries. I can see the light with the sound when I'm singing. So it's both.
It's interesting when you first started talking, there were rays of light coming over you. So it's interesting that you're talking about that now. It seems to have shifted. The sun has moved. But it's really interesting. So are there any threads back to training in different ways that tie into what you're doing now with sound and your voice?
Yes, I would say there's a thread that goes back to a time where I did a fairly long retreat in complete darkness, like so dark you couldn't see your hands here. And that was close to a month of time in that state. And during that time, that was when I began to see sound as light. In the absence of light in the exterior, I began to see internally the light that sound is correlated with. And so that was the beginning of that piece. And very, very strong, and that never left. But it took a lot longer to develop my voice. I didn't even know at that time that my voice was going to be a part of my process. In fact, I was so shy. It took me years to get up the courage to call someone to do voice lessons. And from that, I got up the courage to call to do voice lessons, and then the woman canceled the day before. And it took me a few more years to get that courage again. You know, I think sometimes when we have a big gift, it's a little scary to open the door to it.
Mm.
And so after the needed a pause there, I reached out to somebody I know who's an incredible musician from Morocco, and I asked him if he would teach me to sing. And he had never done that before, but he agreed, and is he's a national treasure in Morocco, and he's, as a musician, so incredibly developed that he had the same expectation for me. And it was really challenging because I was really starting at zero, but it is such a great gift. It's really a great gift. And it so inspired me that it inspired me to learn the language. He comes from the indigenous people, the Amazigh people of North Africa, and their language, it was just so enthralling to me that I wanted to be able to really know what I was singing and to really be able to express in that language and really connect with the culture that all that beauty was coming from.
And you went to Morocco to do that with a group?
I did. I went back and forth to Morocco. I've spent a year, not all at once, but I've spent a year in Morocco learning language and learning the music. And, you know, really, that was really the beginnings of the opening of my voice. And it was such a beautiful opportunity to get to be exposed and embraced by, you know, one of the oldest cultures, you know, oldest languages. There are many older cultures, but one of the oldest existing languages.
And you did that with other languages too, I think. You learned Portuguese and Spanish. And
Yeah, I had a dream for a long time to be able to go and work with the tribes in Brazil. And I really wanted to be able to communicate and not just be, you know, listen to a translator, or but to be able to be fully interactive. And so yes, I did. I studied Portuguese, which I really love. It's also so beautiful. And it really gave me that opportunity and opened the doors for me to go deeper in that way with those tribes, which has been really incredible.
I would love to hear more about that. Which tribes and where you have studied, and maybe some stories about what happened personally for you or what healing you saw there.
Primarily in Brazil, I've worked with Yuanawa, also with the Huni Queen, but most deeply with the Yuanawa. And it was really their music that really, they're singing, both of those tribes. There's just so much joy that comes through and so much healing that comes through the prayers that are their songs. And I had the opportunity this past year to spend a month with the Yuanawa in a really profound diet that was about opening the voice. And that really took my process with my voice to a whole nother level. But the really funny thing was that I was so thirsty while I was there that I actually couldn't sing. So it was a month of singing to open the voice, but my voice was not functional. So I really didn't know what was happening with my voice until I came back and started to sing again in my practice, and to sing into people's bodies and to sing in the remote work. And then the feedback that I started getting was really that something really profound had shifted.
If you could tell me more about that experience, why were you thirsty? I mean, that was the question that came up to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this is for the Yuanawa, the first step on their spiritual path is a month dieta with no pure water for the entire month, and drinking a drink that they have called kaisuma, which is a drink that is chewed by the women, and from the cassava root, they chew the root and it gets spit into, a big kettle, and it gets cooked as this drink, and that is what we had to drink. And at a certain point, different things were opened, different teas or water with lime, but it's not the same as pure water. And my so that was the issue with the voice. But it takes you to a state. It's also very little food, like less than one meal a day, and just rice and green banana. And your body becomes so purified, so free from that type of diet and that isolation in the forest, that so much transforms. There's no knowing in the moment. There's only the knowing that unfolds as you integrate in your life, afterwards.
It sounds,
Incredibly profound.
it sounds like your body in that kind of fast kind of separates from the material bondage.
Mm.
Does that resonate with you?
Yes, it does, and it takes you close to death. And it was exactly what the chief who was moderating the diet said. We're walking you close to death. Not so close that you're going to go there, but close enough that lots of things fall away. And those were his words.
Mm-hmm.
And it's similar. I've experienced that also in Vision Quest and the fasting that goes with that. And it's also in the dark. When you deprive your body of light, you're depriving it of food, because we also live on light, much like the plants. And so that's something that's common in many cultures that I've encountered, is the importance of confronting our mortality, and the importance of going close enough that what is non-essential to pure being
Mm,
really falls away.
mhm. What fell away for you?
Mm. I would say that I have noticed increasingly through all these experiences in my life, and especially with this last one, really the falling away of a need for things in my life and the need for complexity. I'm really happy being with the earth. I live on a farm. I'm really happy, you know, being in nature. I, I don't I don't need a lot at this point.
Mm. So a lot of needs that
Yeah, that's a good way to
we
say it. Yes,
think we have fell away. Yeah.
a lot of the needs that we think are imperative to modern life. Yeah.
Your website is into the heart of the world .earth. Could you say something about that, since we're talking about things falling away and maybe getting closer to what really matters?
Yes, into the heart of the world .earth. It comes from my connection with the Kogi through one of my teachers and a movie that they made. It's been a long time ago now, into the heart of the world, to express to us um, how we really need to change how we live in order for life on this earth to continue. And so that really helped me realize that we really need to go back into the world. There's from the heart of the world because they are already there. And so my website is into the heart of the world because it's where we need to go. And in my work, both my remote work, which is taking people into the essence of themselves, which is implicitly connected with the earth because we're born from her. And also with my earth reweaving that I do, um, that's really comes from the passion in my heart and my love of the earth, partly which came from my studies with Martín Prechtel.
Mhm. Yeah, well, I just want to say something about the Kogi because people might know about them and might not. Um, they are a pre-Columbian culture that is fairly intact. They just kept moving higher and higher on the mountain, away from civilization, as I understand it. And they have not shared their system with many people. They don't take people in to train them very much, but you found someone to teach you that they did do that with. Can you say something about that?
Yes, I through a series of very funny circumstances, I was able to meet somebody who was invited to live with the Kogi. He lived with them for 3 years and studied with them. And at that point, they sent him to the jungle to study there. And he basically apprenticed with very high level teachers and shamans for 20 years. And through the grace of the universe, I've been able to spend time with him.
So he studied with the Mamas, the
Yes.
sort of a priest group of the Kogi people. I use the word priest in quotes.
Yes, he's the only non-Kogi person that I know who's been initiated as the Kogi Mama.
Yes. And you mentioned reweaving and Martín Prechtel. Can you say something about that lineage that you have?
Yeah, I had the great honor to study with Martín Prechtel for 6 years. It was completely life-changing. It's really what led me to go more deeply into music, into language. He challenged us to learn a language that didn't contain the verb to be, so that you couldn't say, this is whatever, this is a table, or that is a tree. You would have to speak more eloquently and speak more in metaphor, and not to be able to say this is good or this is bad or this is black or this is white, because that doesn't even linguistically exist. And that is a common feature in older, intact languages, cultures that lived more intactly with the earth, or intactly with the earth. And that was one also of my motivations for studying Tamazight and learning the language from the indigenous people of North Africa.
And you talked about reweaving.
Yes,
the
the reweaving, through story, through music, through doing things with our hands. He really drew us into a deep, deep relationship with Earth. And that is something that over time has really been flowering and percolating inside of me. And I still, even though it's been years since I studied in person with him, he's still teaching me. And I still have phrases that come back to me, things that he said. And this actually happened the other day, and it was so fantastic. I was sitting and I was meditating by a creek on the farm, and I was very still, and birds came. Maybe I was 6 feet from the creek. They came and started taking a bath in the creek, and I wanted to look at them. So I turned only my eyes and they flew away. But then I was like, wow, they were okay with my presence. They were all right with my whole being here. But as soon as my eyes touched them, they flew. And I thought, what is scary about my eyes that's more scary than the fact of my physical presence, which would seem like that would be scarier. I thought, well, wow, it's how we look in our current modern way. We look at things, which is kind of a predatory way of looking, but we don't look with them. And this phrase that he said popped into my head, which was, I'm seeing you, seeing me, seeing you. And I realized, well, that's interactive. That is relational. And when we're relational with nature, she speaks to us and we become a part of her. And the other thing I noticed is in that second, I dropped completely into my parasympathetic nervous system, just completely. Like, it was not that far off because I've been meditating, but it was a whole nother level of. And then there was the experience of being completely in the web of seeing and being seen with everything, with the trees, with the grass, with the earth below. The birds came back then. So yeah, it continues. His teachings continue to inform my life in a big way.
Yes. And that your story reminds me of your experience in the darkness, where there was no seeing of the ordinary kind.
Yeah, there's no seeing of what's there, but after being in the dark for just 24 hours, the light inside of me started to illuminate. And so I never really was at that point in the darkness again, because the darkness is so full of light, the light that's within us. And yeah, a couple of three really fascinating things about that. One is that I started to see a movie. I guess I see a lot of movies. I don't watch movies and I don't watch TV, but I see I guess because I'm watching inner movies. I started to see this movie of all of creation. It was like seeing the dream field of the earth. And it continued the entire time I was there. All the animals, into cells, it was access to all of creation in this realm, which was incredibly magical.
Mm.
The other thing that happened in about that same time period is, we know the yin yang symbol, right? I studied it for so many years in Chinese medicine, but it's inside of us. Once once I had been in the dark, that appeared just spinning in front of my third eye, and it was always there. It's always there with the same cadence. And since that time, I've run into two other people, one person actually in that retreat, and then another person who came to it from the direction of martial arts, who have become aware of that and seen that. So I feel like it's a function of our pineal gland that actually exists inside of us. So that relationship with the light was also very incredible. The other piece that relates to plants, which was phenomenal, is coming out of the dark after weeks of no external light. We had to wear sunglasses just to see the stars on the new moon. It was a new moon the night we came out, and the stars were so bright, I really had to have my sunglasses on. And the next day, as my eyes began to acclimatize to the sun, I still couldn't look at plants because plants emit so much light that I had to put on my sunglasses just to look at the plants. And light is information. It's what it codes our DNA. It's what, and that the plants are vibrating that much light, that much information. They truly are our teachers.
It's beautiful. Yeah, get into a trance just listening to you.
Oh, it takes me right back there. It's
when you were talking about the third eye, this is in the Hindu tradition, which I've studied some. This is the last place of duality in the movement up the chakras to oneness. And the yin yang is kind of the symbol of duality and everything being part of everything else. So that came to mind.
Wow, that's very cool. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah. Maybe, you could tell us what people have experienced with your distance healing, your sound healing, what I think about when I think about distance healing is quantum mechanics, quantum physics, how things can be in two places at once and how we just don't know what the mystery of how things actually work.
Yeah.
But yeah, see, you can tell
We,
me about that.
when you were speaking, it took me to one of my teachers from Vietnam. And I remember him saying, and it will always stick with me, in the heart, there's no time and there's no space. So healing remotely is something that comes from my heart. And so because of that, there is no time and space. I really am. I really feel that I'm with that person. I don't feel like they're somewhere else. They're with me. And I can reach into wherever I need to reach into to be able to help them, as long as I'm really present in my heart. And that takes me to how I very first started doing distance healing was one time speaking to my mother, and she lives, 7-8 hours from me, and she was having pain in her hip. And of course, you want to help your mother, right? I really wanted to help her, but I wasn't there. And so I said, how about we hang up and I'm going to do something for 10 minutes and I'll call you back. So I did, and I called her back, and she's like, it's as if I never had the pain. So that was the first thing that gave me the idea and the confidence to explore that. And it was born out of love, for my mom. So there's that piece, and there's the piece that we are all a continuum of the one. And so it's really just navigating that and providing the resonance and the intention, because intention is what drives all healing, whether it's in person or remote.
I'm thinking, how would you describe the piece about love? I mean, you just gave a really good example, but is it a vehicle? Is it what we have to go into? Is it for you? What does it feel like when you're doing love and healing?
Yeah, for me, it's a frequency and it's also a field.
Mhm.
It is also essentially what we are when we drop all the stories.
Mhm.
We drop all that stuff that we don't really need to carry anymore. You asked me a question about what people have been feeling from it. And there's a woman who came to me with a long history of physical trauma and emotional trauma. And the sound is really what has helped her go into the spaces to find that healing. And what she had to say about it is that it carries her into her body, and it carries her into the tissues, it carries her into her lineage, and it allows her to it helps her get to the places that she needs to go in order to realize the healing.
Linda, could you say something more about frequency and what that means to you in terms of healing?
Yes, everything has a frequency, right? Each of us has a frequency. Well, we have many frequencies. Um, and each tissue has a frequency. Each disorder in our body has a frequency. And so when I'm working with somebody, I look to find the frequency. And like I said, sometimes it's carried in within a song, but sometimes it's carried within a tone. And if it's a tone, I feel feel the approximation of that. And then internally, I start kind of running an internal scale until I find the one that is it.
Mm.
Um, like something that happens quite frequently. I'm not sure why. I seem to have a capacity for healing bones. And partly that is through frequency. And so I I work in that scale to find the frequency of bone, but also of that person's bone, because it's not always exactly the same.
I've always wondered, how Beethoven wrote music when he couldn't hear. And it sounds like there's something similar going on, for you to be able to hear the scale internally and feel the resonance somehow when it's right.
Mhm. Yeah, I think he could totally hear internally.
Yeah.
I think we all have that. And that's, yeah, that's where songs come from, right? I have a lot of songs that come through me, and they all come from an inner hearing.
One thing I've wanted to talk to you about is ceremony. I know you've done a lot of ceremonies with Indigenous groups, and just what have you come to about the value of ceremony? There's the medicines that people take and there's the teachings, but there's then there's the ceremony, the ritual way that this is done. And I know you've had a lot of experience with it.
I would say that the value of ceremony, there are many. One is the container that it provides, and one is the lineage that it comes from, which is something deep that carries so much experience that has been passed down. And there's a structure in it and an understanding of the process of healing, specifically the process of healing with the plants and with the spirit of the plants, that really leads to the depth and the success of that type of healing. For myself, I started working with mushrooms a lot as a teenager, and I didn't have any structure. It was an exploration, but it wasn't guided in any way. I can just imagine if it had been guided, oh my gosh, I would have gotten so much more out of it. I do feel like it shaped my life, and it, I'm sure is part of what led me to this path in this way. However, the ceremony around the plants, whether it's mushrooms or ayahuasca or San Pedro or yopo or any of the plant medicines, that ceremony, I believe, isn't something that people made up. It was something that was given by the plants themselves to the people so that they would know how to work with the plants in the best way. And that it's very important to respect the spirit of the plants and how they wish to be worked with, and not to just go off and do it with no training or yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, it sounds like what you have experienced is that the ceremony came through shamans who worked intensively with the plants into a structure of a ceremonial structure in maybe in a similar way that the songs come to you. That because they were really committed to working with the plants, they listened to the plants and they got a way of working from them.
Yes, and when we this is my lived experience of when we work with the plants, or we just are with the natural world in a way of respect and a way of gratitude, they begin to teach us. And with that teaching, it comes a big responsibility to continue to respect and to grow into the teachings that they give. But I really believe that a big piece of that comes when the plants feel our respect and when they feel our gratitude. When they can trust us, that's when the information comes. And that's how it develops and magnifies over, generations into, what we have today.
Is there anything else that you would like to say about your work at this point?
I would like to say that it's really an honor to be able to be of service, and that is my greatest desire, that the people who can most benefit from my work are able to find me and be able to receive what's coming through, because I feel like my role is really to just get out of the way. It's really not about me. It's about being a pure conduit for what wants to come through for each person. And that's why I'm passionate about what I do, and Yeah, happy to share it.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. And Linda's website again is Linda?
Into the heart of the world. .earth.
I love the dot earth. We're the dot.
I think you're right.
Thank you very much for your time and what you've said to us.
Thank you so much, Kylea. Really appreciate you.